Welcome back, folks. 20 minutes past the hour, and we're right on schedule. I want to pass it on real quick to Steve Haley and Paul Baker to talk about the Mojaloop training program. This is something you heard Paula mention about. And just as they're getting ready, I'll pass it to Paula to kick them off. Paula?
Great, thanks, Simeon. An important element of getting our ecosystem fully expanded is to ensure that we have training and education programs in place to accelerate our capacity to sell, deploy, and operate Mojaloop instances. So to that end, the Modusbox team had come up with a training program over the last few years with some very rich content that is useful to the marketplace at large. So I'm pleased to announce today that we'll be shifting the Mojaloop training program from Modusbox over to the Mojaloop Foundation. It'll be fully branded as a Mojaloop training program, and we'll phase in more content over time. So we expect it to be live within the week, and we'll certainly let you know via our Slack channels and our newsletter when this program is online on the Mojaloop website. But what we'd like to do today is allow Steve and Paul to give a more detailed overview of the training program, where it stands today, and our vision for the future. So I'll pass it over to you, Steve and Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me okay, Paul?
Yep.
Had a quick moment of challenge. Okay, so thank you, Paula, for that introduction. And yeah, we're quite excited about this convening this presentation of the now Mojaloop training program. So my name is Steve Haley. I'm working on the Mojaloop advocacy and go-to-market, and with Modusbox's economic development team. With me is, as always, Paul Baker. Go ahead, Paul. Yeah, Paul Baker from our engineering team, and largely the architect of this training program. So today we have a couple of goals we want to cover. So Paul and I have talked about the Mojaloop Partner Program in the past, and today we wanted to give you some big updates, but also review some of the things for those of you who are new or haven't seen it before. So first is explain the move and make sure everybody hears it 20 times, new terminology, MPP to MTP. Mojaloop Partner Program is now the Mojaloop Training Program. As the partner program is a little bit of a bigger term, and we wanted to make sure that this training program had a tight focus. There's going to be partners of all shapes and sizes. This is really focusing on one particular type of training. We also wanted to make sure that it was owned by the Mojaloop Foundation as soon as possible, because that way, from the very beginning, it can be built as a community asset with systems in place to encourage community contribution. And that's the only way this is actually going to be successful and sustainable. Second, we want to show that MTP is a useful resource with a real structure that is available to everyone. Now, just as a real structure and a lot of good content doesn't mean it's quite there yet. So third, we want to promote the usage of the program as a tool to help us expand the community, but also for you as community members to help understand much more about Mojaloop and all the code. But the biggest reason we want to make sure people are using it right now is it's not going to get better if people don't use it, like the code itself. Last, we want to make it clear how and why people can and should contribute to the Mojaloop training program, community members. And it's along the lines of what Simeon was talking about this morning. So we'll get into that as well. So first, a little bit of review. Why do we need a training program? Paula mentioned it, and she spoke about it much clearer than I could, but we want to drive and build Mojaloop adoption. And so the amazing thing that Mojaloop talked about is the details, the things that make it different, like we talked about with Leslie and that group this morning. But there's a lot of details, and it's really complicated. And so getting new members into the community and able to be, particularly developers like Adrian was talking about in the same group, getting new developers able to contribute is a challenge. And it's a challenge of any open source community, but particularly this one is pretty specific. And so we want to accelerate that process. And the MTP is designed to explain both some of the big picture ideas, but also a lot of the details as clearly and concisely as possible with as minimal effort. And for some of you, it might not seem clear and concise now, help us with that. But those of you who've had conversations with some of us and tried to get onboarded, it's still more concise than our conversations. Currently, most of the program is focusing on onboarding initiatives. As we see that as kind of like the important scale aspect of Mojaloop is making it as easy as possible for DFSPs to onboard, both from the hub perspective and the DFSP perspective. So here they all are, all the courses that are in progress that we've developed the content for so far. And Paul is going to speak later about the progress on each of those courses. Generally, we divide courses into two primary categories, the hub lens and the DFSP lens. And the Moja courses are actually suitable for both. And in an ideal world, we would it's very helpful if both DFSPs and hub operators are taking those Moja courses together to have a common language and a common starting point to talk about their payment system. That's the intent of how it's structured. So here you can see all the courses that we recommend for DFSPs who want to join Mojaloop, or anyone who is a service provider for a DFSP, including core banking vendors, system integrators, et cetera. And at the end of the deck, there's a link where you can go to find out more about each one of these courses. You go to the website and you can just scroll over any of these courses and it gives you the details on them. And here you can see the hub lens. Note again, both of them included the Moja courses, which Paul is going to talk about a little bit in more detail. Okay, so we don't talk about contribution. This is an open source project. And so just like the code, MPT isn't done. In fact, we actually hope it's never done. It should be a constantly living, breathing training program that's always being updated, always being improved, always being expanded. And we've finally gotten to a point where we're ready to start collecting organized feedback from the community. And we appreciate everyone who's already given us feedback by going through the online courses. There's two kinds of contributors we're going to be looking for, organizational contributors and individual contributors. And so organizational contributors might be a technology company, it might be a hub operator, it might be an organization like UNCDF has done a lot as an organization in my projects to contribute to the training program by sponsoring trainings. Or you could be an individual, and individuals would go through the training and be able to provide direct feedback. So the what? Right now, all we really need is providing comprehensive feedback on the existing course content, and not just the content, but how we deliver it. For example, like where was it too complicated? Where should we slow down? Where should we speed up? What should we skip? What are better ways to explain things? That's the kind of feedback that we're going to be looking for now and in the next period. In the future, though, we're going to be looking for, the community and the Mojaloop Foundation is going to be looking for people to add new courses that are particularly interesting to you or your organization as you add new components, as well as really adjusting some of the course content based off of best practices that you find in your implementations. And there's definitely some individuals out there who could start doing that now, but I think we really want to focus on improving what we've got for the moment. And so finally, the why. So if you're an organization, hopefully you're looking for community contribution or some type of first action to show your commitment to the larger Mojaloop project. And this is one way you can do that. And you can do that, we'll get into the how in a minute. If you're an individual, and particularly someone like me, who would love the right to vote because they care about this project, but is never going to get a pull request, then is never going to enter any code. This is actually going to be counted as community contribution. The details we can follow on that. But so if you're looking for a way to contribute to the community, but you're not a developer, this is a great opportunity for you to do so. So now I'm going to hand it over to Paul to talk about how we develop courses and the progress we've made. Paul, go ahead.
Thanks, Steve. So in the next two slides, I'm going to take you guys through the templated approach that we put together to try and build out these courses. And the main reason why I'm doing it is hoping that you guys will identify with parts of it and feel like you're able to contribute to part of this process in one way or another. So the first step we do when we're building one of these courses is to design the course. And in designing the course, we need to define the depth and breadth of what we want to cover in the topic. So we start off by coming up with a good description of the course and then defining some of the final goals that we want to meet by this course. And that doesn't really make sense unless you also consider the audience and then the prerequisites for that audience. So that needs to be written up front. Then once we've done that, you've got a better sense of the depth and breadth of the topic you want to cover. Then start breaking up that topic into or the topic into smaller topics, and the aim is to try and get those topics to be about 10 to 15 minutes long. Now, we haven't always been able to get that, but that's a good sort of goal to aim for. And once those topics are then sort of structured in a sequence or progression or a journey that the learner is going to go on, you then turn that into what we call a storyboard. At the moment, we've been using presentations to build that storyboard, but there's other tools out there that can also be used. And in that process, we then collect supportive information, references and other media that can also be added to this. And this whole experience really defines what that course is going to become. Next slide. Thanks, Steve. So after designing the course, we then need to turn it into some content that can be delivered. And there are three main sort of levels of content that make sense for the program as it exists at the moment. The first level is what I call presentation Zoom, and that is where we've turned that content into a presentation or maybe a video or demo, and we then present it to a crowd live who connected to a Zoom session, and then in between that, we managed to get some level of interaction with the people taking the course through a Q&A or some other way of doing it, maybe some Zoom surveys or SurveyMonkey questions, just to help keep that interaction going. Now, in that format of the course, it is really easy to update that. So once it's in that format, that's the environment where we prefer to, after having delivered it, to learn from the experience and then revise that and to try and optimize that course, because that's the easiest place to make changes. Once that cycle of improvement has slowed down and you're happy with the content, then it makes sense to turn it into what are called scalable e-learning. And there, initially what we've been doing is just really recording that presentation and then adding in the Q&As and putting it into a hosted environment where you can self-enroll and you can do it at a self-paced learning, and you can participate in Q&As and then get the results. And if you're unhappy with the results, you can review the content again. So that's a very nice sort of a learning environment and allows us to scale. What it doesn't do, though, is we know that you can do better. So from an e-learning point of view, it can be optimized. And this is where we start needing some specialized knowledge. Instructional design knowledge is needed and lots of different media types can be used to try and build a level content that is easier to learn in the e-learning environment. And that's where we want to get to. That's the goal. Now, there are better levels of courses, but right now what we're aiming for is that optimized e-learning. So it's also worth mentioning at this point that there's been a couple of community organizations that have really helped us build this content up to where it is right now. And those are Mawali, UCNDF, and Bank of Tanzania, and TIPS. And that's really, in a number of ways, initially they've created the projects in which we've been able to learn through and then use that learning to produce this material. And then also delivering this course material to them in that deliver, learn, revise cycle. They've been instrumental in us being able to build up this program. Thanks. Next slide, Steve. So now I'm going to talk about the courses that are currently available in that scalable e-learning environment. Another click. So the first course is our Mojo 101 course, and this is actually presented by Steve, but it's really an introduction into what Mojaloop is. It starts with the real-time payments, financial inclusion, level 1 principles, and then talks about what Mojaloop is and what it's trying to achieve. Very good introductory course. And next one. The Mojo 102 course is a course based on the API, including use cases and lots of sequence diagrams. This is a really powerful course because it starts to get to the nuts and bolts of what Mojaloop is and how it works, and details around the sequences. After having gone through this course, it's pretty technical at a sequence diagram level. But you really feel like you understand what's going on and start to understand the brilliance of what Mojaloop is. Next slide. Next course. So the Mojo 103 course, this is our technical overview course, and it starts to introduce the architecture. And by that I mean the component architecture, microservices and functional architecture. And then it also introduced the stack and the modern stack and how it can scale and all those exciting things. And then behind that, the design principles on which all of this has been based. As a techie, that's a very exciting course and a nice course to have in e-learning format that you can do in your own time. Next course. And then finally, we have this security course. And this now talks about the risks that are associated with doing a payment structure, and it touches on or explains how Mojaloop's security design is designed in a way that it's distributed, yet also allows you to have control over your own exposure as a participant. And that's really one of the key points of Mojaloop's brilliance, and is definitely worth going through if you have time. So let's look at the status of all the courses together here. So on the left, we've got designing, and then presentation, and then scalable and optimized. So the bar on the right is the optimized e-learning. That's where we want to be for all our courses, and we're trying to get there. Currently, we've got 5 courses sitting in the scalable e-learning. And then we've got another 7 courses that are being presented on presentable format, and at various levels of refinement and sort of in that iterative learn cycle. Some of them are ready to go into other formats, but really we've got another 7 courses sitting there. And then we've got another 5 courses that are still being designed. So our aim is to follow those blue arrows. That's our initial step. We've chosen those courses in particular because they have the highest audience or the greatest audience. So we want to move those up into the e-learning, optimized e-learning environment. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, and we're going to close out with how you can contribute. So for organizations, Paul talked about the Zoom presentation, and that's probably the easiest way to do is to sponsor a Zoom presentation with active feedback. Those have been our best opportunities to improve because we have active people we're actually talking to. It's our best chance to understand what messages resonate and what don't. And so that's a massive way in which organizations can contribute if you'd like to. And that's like what Paul was talking about, both Mawali and UNCDF really push forward and TIPS really push forward the part of the training program materials. And then also organizations in the future again are going to be able to develop new courses that are a particular area of interest to you. As an individual, we're going to have course working groups within the governance structure that Simeon introduced this morning that you can join. And so keep your eyes on the lookout, or just send us a note if you want to be involved in some of those. And once that gets structured within the community governance, we'll let you know. But you can also do the online courses and send us feedback to the online system. And with that, here is the website where you can go check out where all the courses are, and subject to questions, that's all we have.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Steve and Paul. I appreciate all the work on the Mojaloop training program, and definitely looking forward to using that to create more opportunities for community members to contribute back. Thanks for lighting that, Steve.